My name is Claire Whitmore, and I was 31 years old this summer. I learned that the quietest woman I had ever known had also been the most prepared. I didn't understand that yet, not on the night I'm about to describe. All I knew that evening was that I was tired, and I was driving, and the gas station roses on my passenger seat were already starting to wilt. It was the third Saturday of July. Grandma Edna had turned 78 that morning. I had found out at noon, not from a phone call, not from a plan we had made together, but from a calendar reminder I had set for myself 6 months earlier, because I had learned, by then, that if I didn't remind myself, no one else would remember to remind me. I called the house at 12:15. She picked up on the second ring. "Happy birthday, Gran." "Oh, Claire." Her voice had that particular softness it got when she was surprised by something kind. Like kindness was still a little unexpected after all these years. "You remembered." Of course I remembered. A small pause. "Are you coming?" And the way she asked it, careful, quiet, not wanting to hope too much, that was the thing that made me put on my shoes and get in the car. I drove 2 hours from the city, still in my office flats from the morning shift. Gas station roses on the seat. The radio off because I needed the silence to think. I pulled into her driveway at 7:15 in the evening. The porch light was on. Every other window was dark. I sat in the car for a moment before I got out, looking at the house I had grown up visiting. The pale yellow siding, the hydrangea bushes along the front walk that Grandma Edna had planted the year I was born, the wind chime by the door that had been singing the same 4 notes my entire life. It looked exactly the same, but something felt different. Something I couldn't name yet. I went inside. The kitchen table told the whole story before she said a word. 8 place settings. Paper napkins folded into careful triangles. The good china. The cream-colored plates with the blue rim that only came out for occasions. A small arrangement of dried hydrangeas in a mason jar at the center. And in the middle of it all, a birthday cake. Vanilla. Buttercream frosting. 78 spelled out in careful pink letters. 8 settings. 1 person. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands wrapped around a glass of water, watching the candles she had lit melt slowly down into the frosting. "Gran." She looked up and smiled. That same soft, careful smile. "You came." I set the roses on the counter and pulled out the chair beside her. I didn't ask where everyone else was. I already knew. My mother, her daughter-in-law, had texted that morning. "Happy birthday, Mom. So busy this week. We'll celebrate properly soon." My brother hadn't contacted her at all. My father, her only son, the boy she had raised in this house, the man she had put through college and danced with at his wedding, had posted a photo on Facebook of himself on a golf course, smiling in the sunshine. Captioned, "Beautiful Saturday. Beautiful Saturday." I cut her a slice of cake. I sang happy birthday, badly, off-key, the way she always said I did, and she laughed, a real laugh, the kind that crinkled the corners of her eyes. We ate with our hands because neither of us felt like finding clean forks. We drank cold tea. She told me about the roses she had planted along the back fence and the cardinal that had been visiting the bird feeder every morning. And for a little while, the 7 empty place settings around us felt a little less heavy. At 9 o'clock, I helped her to bed. She was lighter than I remembered. Her wrist, when I held it to help her stand, was thin as a paper roll. Her steps were slower than they had been at Christmas. I pulled the quilt to her chin and was about to turn off the lamp when she caught my hand. Her eyes went sharp, clearer than they had been all evening, like a radio suddenly catching a clean signal through static. "They think I don't know?" she whispered. I waited. "Know what, Gran?" She was already closing her eyes. But before sleep took her, she said one more thing. "The brown envelope. Under the television. It has your name on it." I should have opened it that night. Instead, I went to the guest room, the one with the ceiling crack I had traced with my eyes since I was 6 years old, and I lay awake listening to the house breathe around me. The familiar sounds. The old pipes. The wind through the hydrangeas outside the window. I thought about what she had said. "They think I don't know." Know what? I told myself it was nothing. That she was tired. That the forgetting had been getting worse these last few months. The missed appointments. The stove left on twice. The afternoon she had gotten lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away. Sometimes she said things that didn't connect. I told myself that. But something kept me awake until nearly 2 in the morning. And when I finally got up for a glass of water, I passed the hallway shelf on my way to the kitchen, and I stopped. Behind the framed family photo, tucked almost out of sight, a business card. Gary Mercer, Mercer and Associates Realty. On the back, in my father's handwriting, comp value $740,000. Quick close possible. I stood in the hallway in the dark for a long time, holding that card. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. Sunday morning, I scrubbed the kitchen while Grandma Edna dozed in her recliner. I washed the good plates and stacked them back in the cabinet. I threw away the melted candle stubs and wrapped the leftover cake in foil. I wiped buttercream from the tablecloth and folded it carefully and put it back in the drawer where it had lived for 30 years. The whole time, my eyes kept going to the television cabinet across the room. The brown envelope. At 10 o'clock, I finally opened it. It was heavier than it looked. Maybe 40 pages, sealed with a wax paper flap, my name written on the outside tab in Grandma Edna's handwriting. The same careful blue ink she used for birthday cards and Christmas checks, the loops deliberate, the letters connecting cleanly to each other. This was not the handwriting of a woman who was confused. This was the handwriting of a woman who had made a decision. Clipped to the front of everything was a single note card. Her personal stationery. Cream paper, blue ink. Claire, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. I love you. I'm sorry it has to be you. I read it 3 times. When they come for the house. Not if. When. She had known. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table with the 7 empty birthday settings from the night before, and I began to read. Inside the envelope were documents I recognized from my work as a legal assistant at a small firm in the city. I wasn't an attorney, but I had spent 4 years surrounded by paperwork exactly like this: wills, trusts, property deeds, powers of attorney. I knew what I was looking at. A recorded deed, a trust instrument, a durable power of attorney, a physician's evaluation letter on medical letterhead, dated 14 months ago, notarized pages, witness signatures, all of it in perfect order, all of it bearing Grandma Edna's signature, strong, clean, deliberate. The capital E with its confident flourish, the looping double curve of the lowercase d. The kind of signature a woman makes when she knows exactly what she is signing and why. I pressed my palm flat on top of the stack and sat very still. Outside, I could hear her snoring softly in the recliner, the television murmuring on low volume, a crossword puzzle sliding off her lap. She had done all of this 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad, before my father started visiting more often than usual, before the real estate agent's business card appeared behind the family photo. She had seen it coming, and she had moved first. That afternoon, I found the rest of it. Taking the recycling out to the bins behind the house, I noticed something half hidden behind the hydrangea bushes near the gas meter. A small metal lockbox. A combination dial. The kind real estate agents used to hold house keys for showings. I knew what it was immediately. I had seen them on a dozen properties in my neighborhood. Somebody had been showing this house. I went back inside. I opened the mail pile on the hallway table. 3 weeks of unsorted envelopes, buried between a phone bill and a grocery flyer. I found a listing sheet, printed on Mercer and Associates letterhead. For bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood floors, quarter-acre lot. Listed at $740,000. But the sale price penciled in the margin was $680,000. $60,000 below the comparable homes in this neighborhood. In the kitchen junk drawer, beneath takeout menus and spare batteries and a broken watch, I found the worst of it. A purchase agreement. Unsigned, but fully filled in. Buyer, Hartwell Capital Group, LLC. Cash offer. 30-day close. Seller's representative, my brother, Daniel Whitmore. Listing agent, Gary Mercer. The seller's signature line was blank, but someone had penciled E. Whitmore in block letters just below it. Like a rehearsal, I sat down on the kitchen floor and spread everything out around me. The lockbox I had photographed, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, the business card, a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Target close. August 14th. August 14th. That was 3 weeks away. I looked at the envelope on the table. Then I picked up my phone. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was bright, warm, the specific warmth she used on people she needed something from. Claire, how's Gran doing? We had the most wonderful weekend. Your father played 18 holes, and the weather was just. There's a lockbox on her gas meter, Mom. Silence. 2 seconds. 3. Sweetheart. The warmth adjusted, slightly cooler. That's being handled. Your father and Daniel have been working with a very reputable agent to find a suitable transition plan for Gran. She simply cannot manage a property this size on her own anymore. There's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer. Claire, cooler still. This is a family decision. Between your father, your brother, and me. We have been managing Gran's affairs for months. You don't need to concern yourself with the details. She doesn't know the house is being sold, does she? A long pause. I heard the clink of a wine glass. She knows what she needs to know. That's not an answer. Your grandmother has dementia, Claire. She leaves the stove on. She got lost driving to the post office. She is not in a position to make decisions about a $740,000 asset. And then she said it. The line I will carry in my chest for the rest of my life. She won't remember the house by Christmas anyway. The phone hummed between us. I looked at the kitchen table, at the dried hydrangeas in the mason jar, at the 7 empty birthday settings from the night before. Then it's a good thing I remember, I said. I hung up. I picked up the brown envelope and the business card that had been clipped inside it, a different card, a lawyer's card, with a firm name I didn't recognize. Adler and Associates. Elder Law and Estate Planning. I sat under the kitchen light and read every word of every document until midnight. Tomorrow I would drive to the city. Tonight I had reading to do. The office was on the second floor of a converted brownstone, up a narrow staircase with a brass railing worn smooth from years of hands gripping it on the way to difficult conversations. The waiting room had faded oriental rugs, framed diplomas, and a small brass sign by the door, Adler and Associates. Elder Law and Estate Planning. I had called at 7:30 that morning. The receptionist had put me through in under a minute, which, if you have ever dealt with law offices, tells you they were expecting the call. Miss Whitmore. The attorney's voice was measured, precise. I'm glad you reached out. Can you come in today? Her name was Margaret Adler. She met me in a conference room with a pot of Earl Grey and a box of tissues placed exactly in the center of the table. Not offered, not mentioned, just there, because she had learned in 30 years of this work that they were always needed eventually. She was somewhere in her 60s. Silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of calm that comes not from detachment, but from having sat across this table from people in pain so many times that she had learned exactly how much space to give them. Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago, she began, folding her hands. Early May of last year. She had been to her neurologist the week before. The doctor had used the phrase early-stage cognitive decline. She said she had a window, maybe a year, maybe 2, before the decline became significant. She paused. She wanted to use that window. I set down my tea. She came in alone, Margaret continued. She was sharp, focused. She brought her own folder, deed to the house, tax records, her will from 2003, a list of questions she had handwritten on yellow legal paper. She sat in that chair where you're sitting now, and she said, "My son will do whatever his wife tells him to do. And his wife will sell this house the moment she thinks I can't stop her." The room was very quiet. She said she wanted to stop it before she couldn't. I thought about her at that birthday table. The 8 empty settings. The careful paper napkins. The way she had smiled when I walked in. Like she was surprised I had come. Like she had already learned not to expect it. And before all of that, before the forgetting had gotten bad, before she had stopped being able to drive to the post office, before my father had started dropping by with that particular expression on his face, she had sat in this chair. With her own folder. Her own questions. Her own plan. She chose you specifically, Margaret said. She said, and I wrote this down. She said, Claire is the only one who will fight for the house. Because she is the only one who understands what it means. Something landed in my chest. Heavy and warm at the same time. Let me show you what she built. Margaret walked me through it piece by piece. 14 months of careful, methodical preparation by a woman who had watched her own memory begin to slip and had decided, with whatever clarity she had left, to use it. Item 1. A Revocable Living Trust. The Edna R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust, dated 14 months ago. Grandma Edna had transferred the house, the deed, the title, everything, into this trust. She was the trustee while she had capacity. I was the successor trustee. The moment she became legally incapacitated, control of the house passed not to my father, not to my brother, to me. Item 2. A durable power of attorney naming me as her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it did not expire when she became incapacitated. It activated. Item 3. A physician's evaluation letter from her neurologist, Dr. Patricia Huang, dated the same day as the trust signing. 2 pages. Clinical, precise. Mrs. Whitmore demonstrates full testamentary capacity. She is oriented to time, place, and person. She understands the nature and consequences of the legal instruments she is executing. She had understood exactly what she was signing. She had documented that she understood. She had planned for the moment when someone would try to say she hadn't. The house has been in trust for over a year, Margaret said. Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. No power of attorney held by anyone else grants authority over assets already transferred into this trust. The only person who can authorize a sale is the successor trustee. She looked at me over her reading glasses. That is you, Miss Whitmore. I stared at the documents on the table. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. She won't remember the house by Christmas. But Grandma Edna had remembered. She had remembered 14 months ago, when it still counted. When her signature was still strong and her mind was still clear, and she had walked into this office alone, with her own folder, and quietly built a wall around the thing she loved most. There's something else you should know, Margaret said. She leaned forward slightly. If your family has had her sign any documents recently, a new power of attorney, a listing authorization, while she lacked capacity, those documents are almost certainly not enforceable. I would suggest you look carefully at what else might be in that house. I drove back to Grand's that evening and looked carefully. In the bottom of the hallway credenza, behind a stack of old Reader's Digests, I found what they had had her sign. A power of attorney, dated 9 weeks ago, naming my father, Robert Whitmore, as Grandma Edna's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it, a listing authorization granting my brother Daniel the right to act as seller's representative. Both dated the same day. I carried them to the kitchen table and laid them beside the originals from the envelope. The difference hit me before I finished unfolding the pages. Grandma Edna's trust documents from 14 months ago, strong pen pressure, the loops clean and continuous, every letter connecting to the next with confidence. The capital E with its familiar flourish. The kind of handwriting that belongs to a woman who has been signing her name the same careful way for 60 years. The documents from 9 weeks ago, trembling lines. The E barely rising above the baseline. The loops collapsing. Gaps between letters where there should have been flow. The pen had lifted repeatedly, mid-word, in a way that spoke of confusion, of not being certain where one letter ended and the next began. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. I pulled up my calendar. Checked the date on the documents. 9 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. 9 weeks ago was the week Grandma Edna had been taken to the emergency room after a fall. I had received a text from my mother. Gran took a tumble. Nothing serious. Resting now. I had called. She had seemed confused on the phone, not entirely certain who I was. I had thought it was just the shock of the fall. The hospital discharge summary, which I found in the mail pile, noted, patient disoriented, intermittent confusion, recommend neurological follow-up. They had obtained her signature on a power of attorney during the same week she had been hospitalized for confusion. I photographed everything. Both sets of documents. The discharge summary. The listing sheet. The purchase agreement with the penciled rehearsal signature. Then I called Margaret Adler. I found it, I said. I thought you might, she said. Come back tomorrow. We have work to do. The closing was scheduled for August 14th. A Tuesday, 9 days away. Margaret and I sat in her conference room the next morning with everything spread across the table and made a plan. Quiet, methodical, built entirely on paper. She gave me 2 options. Option 1. File an emergency petition with the probate court to block the sale. It would work, but it would be public, slow, and expensive, and it would give my father and brother time to hire their own attorney, time to move Grandma Edna somewhere, time to muddy the water. Option 2. Let the closing happen. Walk in with the documents. Let the truth meet the paperwork that couldn't survive contact with it. The title company, Margaret explained, cannot insure a title that is in dispute. If you appear at that closing with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, the title officer will not close the transaction. It ends in that room. No courtroom. No filing. Just documents on a table in front of witnesses. I thought about the note. When they come for the house, open this. Grandma Edna hadn't told me to go to court. She had given me a folder. Let the documents talk, Margaret said. 9 days. I started counting. Day 1. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the municipal building and called the state elder abuse hotline. The intake worker was patient and completely unsurprised by anything I described. She had heard it before, different names, same architecture. I gave her the facts. A 78-year-old woman with documented cognitive decline. A power of attorney obtained during a week of hospitalization. An off-market sale priced below comparable value. A son and daughter-in-law directing the process. A brother profiting from the transaction. I'll flag it as time-sensitive, she said. There's a closing date in 9 days. That evening, a voicemail from Margaret. Claire, something interesting. APS told me informally that yours is not the first report they've received on this situation. Someone filed an anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago. They never followed up, no contact information, but the file exists. 6 weeks ago, right around the time they had obtained Grandma Edna's signature. Someone else had seen it happening. Someone had cared enough to call. They just hadn't been brave enough to leave their name. The file already existed. APS wasn't starting from scratch. Day 4. My father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his old Buick. Not the car he drove to church or the club, but the errand car, the one no one would notice. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before he got out. I watched from the kitchen window. He came in through the back door the way he had entered this house since he was a boy. He stood in the kitchen and looked at the cabinets his mother had refinished herself. The window over the sink where she had hung the crystal prism that threw rainbows across the floor every morning. The table she had carried here from her own mother's house in a different city, in a different decade. She used to sing in this kitchen, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Every Sunday morning. The same songs, over and over. I remember, I said. He sat down. He put his hands flat on the table. They were shaking. I know what you think of me. I waited. I didn't want this. Not any of it. Aaron's company is in trouble. Diane says the house is the only way. And Mom, his voice broke. Just a hairline fracture. Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad. He looked at me for one long second. I saw the boy he had been. The one who had grown up in this kitchen, who had eaten off these plates, who had been carried to bed by the same woman now asleep in the next room. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. My mother. He stood up. I should go. He left through the back door. He did not say goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it in the cabinet. Day 5. I bought a cake. Vanilla with buttercream, from the bakery on the corner. 1 candle, because 78 individual candles seemed like a fire hazard, and I wanted to make her laugh. I set it on the table at 3 in the afternoon. 2 plates. 2 forks. 2 napkins. Gran, come sit. She shuffled in from the living room, reading glasses perched on her head, crossword folded in her cardigan pocket. She saw the cake and stopped. Whose birthday? Yours. We're doing it over. She sat down. I lit the candle. She looked at the flame with an expression I have never forgotten. Careful, deliberate, the way you look at something you're trying to hold in your mind, to make it stay. Make a wish, I said. She closed her eyes. She blew. The candle went out on the first try. What did you wish for? She looked at me with those clear, creek water eyes. I wished you'd stay. We ate cake with forks this time. She told me about the kitchen table, how her mother had owned it in Bridgeport, how it had been carried to this house on the back of a pickup truck in 1971, how every scratch on its surface was a Thanksgiving she had won. Then she put her fork down and leaned toward me, very quietly. Don't let them take the table. I won't, Gran. The table stays. Day 7. The phone call started. My aunt. My father's cousin. My mother's friend from the parish. My brother's business partner. Each one carrying the same script, slight variations on the same theme. Nora is overstepping. Claire is emotional. Claire doesn't understand the family's financial situation. My mother had shaped the narrative before I had a chance to speak. I didn't counter it. I didn't post on social media. I didn't call anyone back. The documents would speak. I didn't have to. But on day 7, at 9 in the evening, my phone rang one more time. Aunt June, Grandma Edna's younger sister, 81 years old, still sharp, still in Bridgeport. Claire. Her voice was dry and clear. I don't believe a word Diana is saying. And I want you to know why. Why? Because your grandmother called me. Last year, May. She said she had been to see a lawyer. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She said, and I wrote this down. She said, if anything happens, back Claire up. I gripped the phone. I'm backing you up, Aunt June said. Whatever you need. Capital Title Services occupied a single-story brick building on Elm Street, 3 blocks from the town green. I parked across the street at 8:50. Margaret pulled in beside me at 8:55. We walked in together. She carried her briefcase. I carried the manila envelope. Conference room B was small. 10 chairs around an oval table. A water pitcher. A printer humming in the corner. The title officer, Sandra Keene, 22 years in the business, was arranging documents in neat stacks at the head of the table when we entered. She looked up, glanced at Margaret, and paused. I didn't see your firm listed on this transaction. I represent the Edna R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust, Margaret said evenly. We have documents relevant to this closing. Sandra Keene's pen stopped moving. The door opened behind us. My mother came in first. Cashmere blazer, pearl earrings, smile already in position, the hostess arriving at her own party. My brother followed in a sport coat, leather portfolio under his arm, jaw set. My father trailed them both, gray-faced, looking at the floor. Behind them came Gary Mercer, the real estate agent, with a stack of closing documents fanned in his hand. And last, the buyer's representative in a navy suit, expression businesslike and closed. My mother saw me and stopped. Claire. She looked at Margaret. At the envelope in my hands. Her smile didn't change, but the muscles underneath it did. What are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said. I sat down. Margaret sat beside me. I placed the envelope on the table in front of me, and I waited. The room was very quiet. Margaret opened her briefcase and laid 3 documents on the table, one at a time, centered and square. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. This deed was recorded with the county clerk 14 months ago. It transfers the property at 14 Wren Lane into the Edna R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust. Miss Whitmore, she nodded toward me, is the named successor trustee. My mother's expression began to change. Not all at once. In stages. Second, the durable power of attorney naming me as Grandma Edna's agent. Executed the same day. Notarized, witnessed, currently in effect. My brother leaned forward. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes. Third, Dr. Huang's capacity evaluation. Dated 14 months ago. It confirms that Edna Whitmore had full testamentary capacity when she signed these documents. I also have Dr. Huang's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming that Mrs. Whitmore now lacks capacity, meaning any documents she signed after her cognitive decline, including the power of attorney your family obtained during her hospitalization, were signed without the legal competence required to make them binding. The room went absolutely still. Sandra Keene picked up the trust deed. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her file. Then she looked at Gary Mercer. Mr. Mercer, you informed this office that the property was held in the seller's individual name. Gary Mercer said nothing. The color had left his face. The trust was never dissolved, Margaret said. The recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed. Sandra Keene set the documents down. She squared her shoulders. And she said 5 words. I cannot close this transaction. My mother stood up. Her voice climbed. This is ridiculous. Nora is a legal assistant. She has no authority. My husband is Edna's only child, her only living family. Her only child who obtained her signature on a power of attorney during a week she was hospitalized for confusion, Margaret said. Her voice did not rise. It never rose. A power of attorney with no capacity evaluation attached. A power of attorney that, even if valid, does not grant authority over assets held in trust. You can't do this. My brother stood now too. Raw, not theatrical. I have a balloon payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through, Mr. Whitmore, your financial obligations are not this office's concern, Sandra said. This is her house, my mother said. Her home. Her family should decide what happens to it. I looked at her. I kept my voice exactly where I had practiced. Conversational, steady, the volume of a normal exchange. You set her birthday table for 8 people and no one came. You got her signature on documents during a hospital stay. You told me she wouldn't remember the house by Christmas. I paused. And you're telling me you're the one who cares about what happens to her. My brother's mouth opened. Closed. My mother was crying now. My father sat motionless, staring at the trust deed, at his mother's signature, the strong, deliberate one from 14 months ago. I could see him understanding, finally, what she had done. She had looked at her only son and decided, quietly, that she could not trust him with the most important thing she had. And she had been right. The buyer's representative closed his portfolio and stood. He nodded to Sandra and walked out without a word. Gary Mercer was already gathering his papers, not meeting anyone's eyes. For the record, Margaret said into the quiet, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Edna Whitmore is currently active. The power of attorney obtained in July will be formally challenged. Any further attempt to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the trustee's authorization will be treated accordingly. My mother stopped crying. She looked at me, tears still wet on her cheeks, but the expression beneath them shifting to something harder. When this family falls apart, she said, you'll remember that you caused it. I stood up. I put the envelope in my bag. I didn't cause it, I said. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. I thanked Sandra Keene for her professionalism. She nodded. I'll be documenting this closing as void and flagging the file. You'll receive confirmation by email. I walked out of conference room B. Margaret followed. The door swung shut behind us. Outside, the August morning was bright and clean and completely ordinary. I stood on the sidewalk and breathed until I remembered how. You did well, Margaret said. I did what she asked me to, I said. That's what I mean. I drove back to 14, Wren Lane with the envelope on the passenger seat, exactly where the gas station roses had been. The hydrangeas were still along the front walk, deep purple in the morning sun. The wind chime was singing its 4 familiar notes. The porch light was on even though it was full daylight, the way it always was, the way it had always been. I went inside. Grandma Edna was asleep in her recliner, crossword in her lap, reading glasses on. The crystal prism above the sink was throwing small rainbows across the kitchen floor. I knelt beside her chair and pulled the quilt around her shoulders. It's done, Gran, I said. The house is safe. She stirred. Her eyes opened, cloudy, then clearing. Did you keep the table? I laughed. A real one, from somewhere deep. I kept the table. She smiled. Small, certain. The smile of a woman who had planned for this exact moment and was satisfied to find the plan had worked. Good girl. She closed her eyes. Within a minute, she was asleep again. I sat on the floor beside her chair and looked through the doorway at the kitchen table, the one from Bridgeport, scratched and coffee-stained, still standing exactly where it had stood since 1971. Here is what happened after. The APS investigation was substantiated. Over the following months, through 2 probate hearings that my family did not contest, the power of attorney was formally voided. The court confirmed my role as permanent trustee. I was appointed Grandma Edna's legal guardian. I deferred my plans. I took leave from my job. I moved into the guest room, the one with the ceiling crack, and I became the person who made sure Grandma Edna ate dinner and took her medication and sat on the porch in the afternoons when the light came through the hydrangeas. My brother's business collapsed by autumn. The balloon payment came due, and he couldn't meet it. He sold the car. Last I heard, he was working for someone else's firm at a fraction of what he used to make. My mother's standing in their community quietly eroded. The story spread the way stories do in small towns. Not all at once, but steadily, one conversation at a time. She and my father moved to a condo in the spring. My father sent me an email in March. 3 sentences. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Some apologies come too late to be anything but a record of what a person knows they should have said. On a Tuesday in November, I baked a cake. Vanilla with buttercream. Nothing fancy. I set it on the kitchen table, the Bridgeport table, the survivor of 50 years of Thanksgivings, and I called Grandma Edna in from the living room. Whose birthday? Nobody's. I lit the single candle. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, she said. It is. She took another bite. Don't change it. We ate in the kitchen while the afternoon light came through the window. The prisms scattered small rainbows across the floor, same as always. The table held, same as always. I've thought a lot about what Grandma Edna knew and when she knew it. She had watched her memory begin to slip, and instead of grieving what she was losing, she had focused on what she could still do. She had walked into a lawyer's office, alone, with her own folder, her own questions, her own plan, and she had built something that would last beyond the window of her clarity. She had known she wouldn't always be able to fight for herself, so she had fought in advance. And she had chosen me, not because I was the most powerful person in the family, not because I had the most money or the most influence, because I was the one who had driven 2 hours on a Saturday with grocery store roses and sung happy birthday off-key to a woman sitting alone at a table set for 8. She had watched for years to see who would show up, and when the moment came, she gave everything to the person who had. If this story reminded you of someone, check on them today, not tomorrow. Today. The people who love you quietly are often the ones building walls around the things they love while no one is watching. Pay attention. Show up. A person's worth does not expire when their memory does. And the quietest love in a family is sometimes the only one keeping watch. That's my story. One empty birthday table, one brown envelope, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.